the things I get asked a lot is, hey man, what kind of amps and effects do you use? And the answer, unfortunately, is not all that interesting. In fact, I will now reveal to you the mystery rig which produces most of the sounds that you hear in my lessons and in these videos. The mystery rig is an Apple PowerBook G4, running that most humble of audio recording programs, GarageBand. In addition to the sounds in GarageBand, I also have and like a couple different SansAmp pedals. I've got the SansAmp GT2. I also have the SansAmp Tri-OD. Tri-OD is actually the box that you hear in the Cracking the Code trailer, which I know you know is this. Pretty cool tone. But I don't always want to rig up a laptop or a bunch of pedals when it comes time to practice something, and for those occasions, I went out and got one of these, which is a Tech 21 Trademark 30. It's basically a SansAmp GT2 in a box, and as you might imagine, it really nails that overdriven lead sound that you get from the GT2 and the Tri-OD. In addition, if you flick the amp switch over to Tweed, you get a pretty cool, spanking country sound. Pretty cool little box. Nevertheless, it is true, I actually do not own a decent medium format amplifier that I could use to play alongside a drummer or take out on a small gig. Good news is, we're going to fix that today. That's right, go get your Metro cards because we are going amp shopping. Now the place we're going is called Ultrasound Rehearsal. It's a well-known rehearsal studio in Manhattan that happens to be incredibly well stocked. In fact, they're also an amp dealer, which means that at Ultrasound, the backline you play is the same backline you can buy. Now, I picked a hell of a day to do this, but I'm on a mission from the gods of tone. So our studio at Ultrasound was pretty cool. The room was acoustically treated from top to bottom. We had a full PA, and we had a bunch of instruments. Everybody knows Wipeout. That's not the drum part.
The guitar part I can tell, but I'm trying
to... Listen, we're not remaking King Kong. I said Wipeout, okay?
No, isn't that...
I can't be the cameraman. Did I mention they have amps? Oh yeah, the kind of amps that regular Joes like you and me would have to hock a kidney to get into. If I'm going from no amp to amp, I may as well go whole hog. First order of business is to set up the recording environment we're going to use to take sound samples of the amps. For that, I'm using an MXL condenser microphone, which should give me a pretty transparent sound of the amps in the room. Further, it's a USB mic, so you can plug it right into the side of the PowerBook. Then you set up your track in GarageBand, and you get a decent mic position that's not going to blow your head off when you hit the first power chord, and you're pretty much ready to rock and roll. Except for that bit about not knowing how to operate a guitar amp. Gains is on.
It warms up.
Is that right?
Yeah.
It physically makes no sound?
Yeah, exactly.
So wait, why is it not making any sound anymore?
Really?
It's either 3 or 2, right? Mm-hmm. Come on, 3. Alright, well that's the volume. That's the volume. I think there's a foot switch for this actually. Still not making any sound. Am I really fit to own this kind of machinery? Stand by.
Standby. Did we switch the standby on?
Once the mysteries of Standby were solved, as you can see, our first victim is the Cornford Hellcat. And even as we were setting mic levels, the Hellcat impressed almost immediately with its incredible transient response.
D, check out the red light.
Get it.
You see it clips every time I do that. Super cool. But that's a very responsive amplifier, isn't it?
As the gain goes up, the story only gets better. At medium drive settings, the Hellcat spits out a truly filthy grit.
Yeah, get a little
really
bit of
just hear
Hendrix vibe.
everything. You hear everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
And when we finally did peg the gain, boy, you better learn how to swim because the harmonics flow like water.
Do all the harmonic stuff with
Yeah,
this amp.
yeah.
All the
that's-
like chunky muting harmonic. I don't know if that's the cabinet that we're hearing, or if it's just a much kind of twangier amp, but it's got a lot more top end. It's just great.
Well, let's try a different one.
All right, let's go right for the big guns. Let's do the Bruno Leadman.
Brunos are handmade boutique amps from New York City, and Ultrasound happened to be their exclusive distributor, so I was interested in trying them out. The Leadman 60 is their high gain model.
That's not a
But
good
don't
sound.
forget Standby.
That's a better sound.
Like the Cornford, the Bruno announced its character literally within the first couple of notes.
This sounds very mid-rangey to me.
And then when the gain is kicked up, this unusual mid-range quality becomes an angry, snarling, bandwidth-limited dog that almost sounds like a combination of a wah and a fuzz pedal.
So like when you kind of half dead the note, you mute it, but it's still ringed.
Yeah.
That's like, it sounds like the 60s. Or pedal metal. But yeah, very much like a 60s distortion, right? with these crazy high harmonics. This guy is Alnico Blues, and this guy is vintage 30s. Everything is 4x12. So it's kind of hard to say what's responsible for what, but we're definitely getting more of a mid-rangey kind of thing.
If you back off on the volume knob, the Bruno does an attractive medium drive.
If we like go halvesies on the preamp. You get your Summer of '69.
Exactly.
Another decent medium drive sound for the Bruno is the Funk Test. Not as tight as the Cornford, but beefier in the mid-range.
That's not a real. This thing doesn't even really do clean, does it?
No.
Yeah, it does. If you put the preamp on like 1.5, it does clean.
And now, an intelligence test brought to you by the VHT Pitbull.
Alright, so we got, what do we got? We got gain. Is this high gain normal? We got a lead button. We've got one gain, we've got high gain. That's not the volume. That's the lead thing, but what does edge do? I'm gonna tell you, I almost don't even want to play this amp with all these buttons. Oh wait, and this is our foot switch. Jesus fucking Christ. Are you still alive?
Yeah, you got it.
This thing is complicated. Can you figure this out?
No, I'm not even paying attention really.
That's volume. This is gain boost. You know what? I don't even care. Let's go to some other amp. I'm not even joking. Oh,
Look, it has a kick to it.
Right. So the next time I'm playing the Meadowlands, we'll bring out this guy.
Okay.
Let's do the Dietzel down here. This only has 37 buttons on it. 37.
No, it's only three. It's 4 channels though. You know, the separate channels are only like 5 per channel.
5 buttons per channel. That's a good ratio.
If the Hellcat was all about the twang, and the Leadman 60 was all about the mid-range, then the Dietzel VH4 was all about the bass.
Could be a good bass amp.
Yeah, seriously.
It's a decent sounding clean channel, right? Why are we getting so much bass out
All
of
that
this?
bottom end was good for warm blues soloing.
Alright, so that's a little more gain. That's more gain. And that's the most gain. Alright, so there we've discovered the secret logic of the Dietzel control panel.
With
here.
all that bass, Channel 4 produced some serious Zakk Wylde sounds.
Sounds.
We're sort of dialing in like bass at 2 o'clock, mid at like noon. Oh no, I'm sorry. You know, bass is at 2 o'clock, middle at noon, treble at. It's kind of like with the slant, with the diagonal arrangement of the knobs. It sort of fools you where the unity gain position is.
Rolling back the gain on Channel 4 produces a pleasant but somewhat clipped sound.
Yeah.
And finally, the funk test. Good, but for this crew, more or less average. Next up is the roccaforte, and as a former Italian major, I can tell you that roccaforte means hard rock, and true to its name, the roccaforte is definitely loud.
Jesus Louise. The Roccaforte has some gain. I mean, literally, you're adjusting between like 0.62 and 0.64.
Crazy.
At which 0.65 leads to eardrum rupture.
Also true to its name, the roccaforte is probably the most straightforward rock amp we've played so far. It doesn't favor the highs, the mids, or the lows, and delivers power chords that'll punch you in the chest. In particular, the rock absolutely nails the sound of a certain red and white striped guitar hero. This neutral frequency response is actually a good thing for my guitars. The Washburns have a tendency to be shrill in the upper registers, but with the Roccaforte, you can play shred lines using the bridge pickup and it's totally solid. There's no twang at all.
Anytime I want to start playing the scales, you know it's got to sound at least halfway decent.
But neutral doesn't mean lifeless. The Roccaforte also has great harmonic response.
That's 50% gain and we're still getting the squeal. That's pretty good.
Like every amp we've tested so far, except for the Hellcat, the Roccaforte also has a tendency to produce fuzz tones on the lower strings.
That fuzz tone thing when you
Right.
hit the low note. Get a little bit of it there, but
You also hear it when soloing in the upper registers on the neck pickup.
Alright, so that's high gain. Let's see what low gain sounds like. Which is blessedly simply just lowering the gain control, is it not? 25% gain. 10%.
Kinda plain. And the same is true for our old standby, the funk test. Yes, true to its name, the Roccaforte is a hard rock amp and probably best enjoyed cranked.
Nice. Well, lights up.
Bad Cat is open for business. Why does that make it look like a motel in Vegas?
The Hellcat had a satanic wail, but the Bad Cat was definitely fatter around the middle.
known for blues sounds?
I don't know amps.
It doesn't want to do the harmonics, but it's definitely, it gives you the fat bluesy sound though.
The Bad Cat's high gain was equally fat and attractive.
I like that you can max out some of these controls and not kill the sound. And it's probably just arbitrarily how the knob is voiced, but it just lessens the opportunity for damage.
The Cat's funk was lively and among the best of the bunch. Now, the Bad Cat may not have the widest tonal palette, but every twist of the knob produces quality, and as a colorful, full-bodied blues driver, it's tough to beat. These days, it seems like John Mayer is pretty much everywhere, so of course we had to play Little Johnny's amp. That's the 2-Rock. In this case, it's the 2-Rock Topaz. Now, despite a little interface complexity, once we got the Topaz dialed in, what it produced was exceptionally straightforward.
I don't know about you, but I like that sound.
Now, if Eddie Van Halen had the brown sound, the Topaz definitely has the round sound. It's an extremely smooth and refined baritone experience. The Topaz round sound was so round, it could even do a passable jazz arch top. Maybe it's just my imagination, but I feel like the Topaz's singing mid-range really does kind of sound like John Mayer. But the big surprise came when we kicked up the gain.
Had the feedback standing right next to this. How did John Mayer not get through?
Overdriven, the 2-Rock's round sound became a round, brown wall of distortion.
pickup, the fuzz was so thick it was like the head on a pint of Guinness.
More of that fuzz tone there at the bottom. All right, I like that.
Yeah.
It does an okay distortion for an amp that's not really probably supposed to be a distortion kind of amp, right?
And then there are those times when demoing amps kind of feels a little bit like internet dating.
We got another motel. We're at the Matchless Motel now. We have a chieftain-sized bed at the Matchless Motel.
I'm happy to report that at the Matchless Motel, the rooms are exceptionally bright and clean. I can also report that the Matchless Motel has an ample supply of Captain Crunch.
We have the tone controls flat, and that's pretty bright sound.
Now, the Matchless doesn't really do a high gain, so when you peg the knob, things basically just get crunchier. The tones, touch sensitivity, and harmonic response of the Chieftain are truly world-class. It's too bad it doesn't do the high gain thing.
Great rock amp. Probably not for me, though.
Oh well, in the search for true love, I've spent almost 3 hours here, and my blood sugar is at an all-time low. I've got energy enough for about one more. Let's make it a bookend and go with another Cornford. At high gain settings, the MK50 definitely displays its sibling ties with those growly mids and crazy high harmonics that the Hellcat also has. Now, the difference between the 50 and the Hellcat is that the 50 seems to do all of this with much greater bass extension, sort of like the Dietzel. Yet all is not well in Gainland. Along with this increased bass response comes a strange clipping sound that you can hear as a click in single-note runs. You hear that, right? That weird clip sound? It's like a beard that's so fuzzy. Right? What's wrong with this amplifier? Despite our best efforts, we weren't able to get rid of the clipping noise. We played with the bass control and also the resonance control, which is like the master bass control on this amp, all to no avail. Finally, we reached for the gain. I mean, what can we do to make that fucking noise go away? Back off the overdrive, I guess, right? Didn't work. But at lower gain settings, the sound actually did go away, and the MK50's character became completely smooth. Dialing back even further produced some pretty good smoky blues and clean tones. The funk was tight, but maybe not as lively as the Two Cats, at least on these tone settings. So after 3 hours, a half dozen amps, and about a zillion notes, have we found the one? And the winner is?
Well, for one thing, the winner is me. If you've never demoed an amp in a rehearsal studio situation before, you really don't know what you're missing. It's just a whole other planetary system of comfort and privacy that allows you to get under the skin of the equipment in a way that's just not possible in a conventional store situation. There's just something about going in a room, closing a door, and having your own personal time and space to get to know the equipment in a completely unique way. Of course, you're paying for the time, so it's a win-win even if you don't buy an amp. And if you do, the money is accountable toward the purchase of the amp you ultimately buy. Now, we used our time at Ultrasound to check out some pretty amazing pieces of gear. The Cornford Hellcat, the Bruno Leadman 60, the Dietzel VH4, and a whole host of others. Now, they all did different things, but there really wasn't a bad apple in the bunch. For more sound samples of these great amps, be sure and check out the accompanying article on my site at troygrady.com. And of course, stay tuned for part 2 where you'll find out which one I took home with me.